A single mother saved a stranger from a heart attack, unaware he was a millionaire CEO, and ultimately fell in love with him. Molly Hayes had been awake since 5:30 a.m. The small cafe where she worked opened at 6 and she barely had enough time to get Eli dressed, fed, and secured into the baby carrier on her delivery scooter. The machine was old and unreliable, making more rattling noises than engine sounds, but it always got her through her morning deliveries and back in time for her shift behind the counter. At just over a year old, Eli was a remarkably quiet passenger. His wide blue eyes blinked calmly from under his knitted cap as the wind tugged gently at Molly's blonde ponytail. She made her last delivery of the morning and was on her way back to the cafe when she saw a man collapsing on the sidewalk just ahead near the corner of 4th and Elm. He clutched his chest, staggered once, and then dropped hard to the pavement. Molly's heart slammed in her chest. People began to gather, but no one moved to help. A few were filming on their phones, while others just stood frozen mouths slightly open, unsure what to do. Horns honked, a woman gasped, and someone shouted for an ambulance. Molly pulled the scooter to the curb and unbuckled her helmet with shaking fingers. She checked Eli, still strapped in, secured, and safe. His small hands clutched his stuffed dinosaur, completely oblivious to the commotion. Without another thought, she ran towards the fallen man. The man on the ground was in his mid-40s, well-dressed in a dark gray suit with silver at his temples. His eyes were shut tight in pain, his lips pale, almost blue. He clearly could not breathe. "Sir," she called out, kneeling beside him, "can you hear me?" There was no response. Molly's training from her brief semester in nursing school surfaced in a rush of adrenaline. She checked his pulse. It was weak. His breathing was shallow and erratic. "Someone call 911, she yelled, already beginning chest compressions. 1, 2, 3. The crowd watched, but no one stepped in to assist. All that could be heard was the sound of her counting the rhythmic thud of her palms against the man's chest and the slow squeak of his belt buckle with each pump. He was going to die. Molly's breath caught. She blinked back tears and focused harder. Eli was just feet away, safe, and this man was someone's father, someone's son, maybe someone's everything. She tilted his head, gave 2 breaths, and then returned to compressions again and again. Almost 2 full minutes passed, though it felt like a lifetime. Then he gasped. It was shallow, barely there, but it was enough. Molly dropped her head, her eyes stinging her chest, heaving with relief. The ambulance sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The man, whoever he was alive. The EMTs arrived and quickly took over. One of them nodded at Molly. "You did good," he said. "If you hadn't stepped in when you did." She nodded silently, her hands trembling. She gave her name and a brief statement, then walked back to Eli. He gurgled happily when she approached, patting her cheek with a chubby hand. She kissed his forehead. "Hey, baby," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Mama's okay." She looked back once as the EMTs loaded the man into the ambulance. The crowd had started to thin, though a few people were still filming. One woman asked, "Do you know who that is?" Molly shook her head. She did not care. All she knew was that for 2 minutes she had chosen to leave her child strapped to a scooter vulnerable while she tried to keep a stranger alive. It was not an easy decision, nor was it mere instinct. It was something deeper, something profoundly human. As she climbed back onto the scooter and secured her helmet, Molly felt the tears fall quiet hot streaks down her face. Eli looked up at her with wide, unknowing eyes. "I thought he was going to die," she whispered. But he had not, and she would never forget it. Not the color of his face, not the weight of his chest under her hands, not the terrifying moment when she wondered if Eli would be left alone in the world if something went wrong. But most of all, she would never forget the stillness, the kind that hangs in the air when life hangs by a thread and the moment that thread held firm. The first thing Charles Whitman noticed when he opened his eyes was the sterile white of a hospital ceiling. The second was the weight in his chest and the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. "Mr. Whitman," a doctor said gently, "you are extremely lucky. You went into cardiac arrest. If it hadn't been for a bystander who performed CPR right away, you wouldn't be here." Charles blinked, his memory blurry. "A bystander?" "A young woman," the doctor confirmed. "She started CPR in the critical window and kept you stable until the ambulance arrived." Bits of the moment came rushing back: the cold sidewalk, the buzz of city noise, and then her face, blonde hair, pale blue eyes wide with fear, yet steady. "I want to find her," he said. Later that day, with help from his assistant and security team, Charles reviewed street camera footage. The angle was poor, but they caught her face. The emergency report gave them a name: Molly Hayes. She was 20 years old, a local barista, lived in a small shared apartment, had a 1-year-old son, no car, and no known assets. But she had saved his life. The next morning, Charles sent a bouquet of white tulips to her cafe, along with a handwritten card to Miss Hayes. "Words fall short in moments like this, but please know I owe you my life. With deepest gratitude, Charles Whitman." Molly read the note in silence, then tucked it beneath the register. She said nothing. To her, it felt like a rich man doing what was expected out of politeness, not sincerity. 2 days later, he came in. No bodyguards, no flashy car, just Charles Whitman in a gray wool coat, waiting quietly in line like anyone else. Molly nearly dropped the mug in her hand when he reached the counter. He gave a soft smile. "Molly Hayes." She nodded. "Yes. I hope I'm not interrupting." "You're not. I wanted to thank you in person. I got the flowers," she said flatly, "and the note." And no reply. "I didn't think you needed one." He chuckled softly. "Fair enough." He glanced toward a quiet table. "Would you let me buy you lunch as a thank you?" "With all due respect, Mr. Whitman," she replied, "I don't need a reward." "It's not a reward. Then a gesture, maybe." Molly met his eyes. "I'm glad you're alive. That's all I wanted. I didn't save you for lunch. I saved you because no one else did." There was no resentment in her voice, only honesty. Charles paused, then nodded. "You're right. I respect that." A quiet moment passed between them, still and sincere. "I'll let you get back to work," he said. Molly gave the faintest smile. "Just try not to collapse again." He laughed, a real laugh that softened his whole face. For what it's worth, Miss Hayes being turned down has never felt more humbling. And just like that, he left. No spectacle, no pressure. Molly stood there for a long second, watching him disappear into the stream of city life. For the first time, she wondered if maybe true gratitude didn't come in grand gestures. Maybe sometimes it showed up quietly, with presence, with humility, even in the form of a man who nearly died in your arms. Charles Whitman returned to the cafe the next morning and the morning after that. Not every day, just often enough that Molly noticed. He always came alone, ordered black coffee, no sugar. Sometimes he sat by the window with a folded newspaper. Other times he stood quietly by the counter. He never brought up the rescue, never asked for attention. He just showed up. At first, Molly kept her distance. A billionaire didn't hang around a local cafe for fun, but over time his presence became familiar, less strange. One Tuesday morning, after a night of broken sleep, Molly leaned against the counter as Charles waited for his drink. "I haven't slept through the night since Eli was born," she muttered, mostly to herself. Charles raised an eyebrow. "Eli's your son." She nodded, brushing her hair back. "A year and 4 months old. A full-time job, no paycheck." Charles smiled faintly. "Sounds relentless." "It is. I work here and I deliver orders in the evenings. Rent diapers, it piles up." She paused, unsure why she was telling him. "It gets lonely," she added quietly, "when your whole world is a toddler who cries because his banana broke." Charles didn't laugh. He just nodded. "I know that kind of loneliness." Molly blinked, surprised. "I grew up in a house where success was mandatory. Tutors, schools, rules, but affection, no one knew how." He paused. "I was married once briefly, no kids. I built companies and networks, but at the end of the day, I still go home to silence." That admission made Molly look at him differently. Not as a CEO, just a man. A few days later, Charles came during her afternoon shift, and for the first time Eli was with her, curled in a stroller, chewing his sleeve, frowning at the lights. Charles bent slightly. "Hello there." Eli shrank back, burying his face in Molly's leg. "He's shy," she said, lifting him up. "Not used to strangers." Charles didn't push. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small stuffed bear blue with button eyes. Molly frowned. "Where did you—" "I asked the girl at the shop across the street," he said. "She said blue was a safe bet." Eli eyed the bear, then reached out. The ice began to melt. 2 days later, Molly's old medical bills vanished from her account. An anonymous payment had cleared the balance. She suspected Charles, but he said nothing. The bear stayed too. No note, no explanation. Late one night in November, Eli burned with fever. Molly panicked. No car, no money for urgent care. Buses were no longer running. She was about to call 911 when headlights lit up her small yard. "Charles, I spoke with your neighbor," he explained. "The one you borrowed jumper cables from. He pointed me here." Molly said nothing. She wrapped Eli in a blanket and climbed into his car. At the hospital, Charles stayed. He held the diaper bag, brought water, spoke with nurses, and rocked Eli when Molly's arms gave out. When the doctor finally said it was a virus, that the fever had broken, Charles sat beside the crib all night. He didn't check his phone. He didn't glance at his watch. At 2:00 a.m., a nurse passed by and paused. "Is that Charles Whitman?" she whispered. "The Charles Whitman in pediatrics. I think he's with the young mother." They watched in silence, not out of awe for his wealth, but for his choice to be there to stay with a child that wasn't his, to be present for a mother with nothing to offer but truth and gratitude. In that quiet hospital room, something unspoken formed. Not love, not yet, but something real and lasting. A week after the hospital night, Charles returned to the cafe with something in a manila envelope. He waited until Molly's shift slowed, then approached the counter. "I've been thinking," he said gently. "You once said you started nursing school before Eli." Molly glanced at the envelope. "Yeah, I dropped out when I got pregnant." Charles slid it toward her. "This is a full scholarship if you want it, for any program you choose, no strings attached." Molly stared. Her hand hovered, then pulled back. "I don't know," she said. "It's a lot." Charles did not press. "Just think about it." She nodded. "I will." But she did not open the envelope for 2 days. When she finally did, it was real program options, paid tuition, local college contacts. He had done the legwork, made it easy. Maybe too easy. That scared her. At work, her friend Harper noticed something was off. "You've got that look," Harper said. "What's going on?" Molly hesitated, then told her. Harper blinked. "Wait, Charles Whitman, the guy who comes in here." Molly nodded. "And he's offering to pay for school just like that." "He's just trying to help," Molly said quickly. Harper raised an eyebrow. "He's old enough to be your dad." Another co-worker chimed in, laughing. "So what now? From barista to billionaire's wife." "Guess he's into tired single moms with baby spit on their sleeves," someone joked. Molly forced a smile, but that night, standing in front of her bathroom mirror, Eli asleep in his crib, the jokes echoed louder. Her reflection stared back, frayed ponytail, oversized sweatshirt, eyes heavy with exhaustion. What was she doing? She thought of Charles' sharp, suit-polished life, the way people treated him, like he mattered. Then she looked at herself, a single mom with a kid and no car. It did not add up. The next day, Charles invited her to a charity gala, a fundraiser for children's health. She said yes. She'd borrowed a navy blue dress from Harper. It fit barely. Her shoes didn't match, but they were clean. Charles picked her up himself. No driver, no limo. "You look lovely," he said. It sounded real. But the moment they entered the ballroom, the air shifted. Women in sequins turned to stare. Men in tuxes glanced, whispered. "Who is that? Is he so young?" "Blonde, of course." "Midlife crisis much. He looks like she got lost on the way to Bible study." Molly held her glass tighter. Charles didn't react. He stayed close, introduced her politely, never made her feel less than, but the stares burned. She excused herself and slipped onto the balcony. The cold air felt like relief. Why had she come? Inside near the coat room, she heard two older women talking. She must be his little charity case. You think he brought her for her brains? Molly walked away before hearing more. At home later, she stood over Eli's crib watching his chest rise and fall. All of it, the stares, the jokes, the whispers, hit her at once. Would this be her life now? Always explaining, always being the girl who got lucky by catching a rich man's eye. A sob rose in her chest. She covered her mouth, cried in silence. By morning, her mind was made up. She declined Charles's next invitation. Then the next one. She stopped answering his messages. No drama, no explanation. Charles did not show up again. He woke up in the hospital remembering her eyes, not because they were kind, though they were, but because she looked at him like a human being, not a headline or a bank account. That had not happened in a very long time. He had lived surrounded by people who smiled because they were paid to, who listened because he signed their checks. But he never knew what it felt like to be helped without agenda. Until her. She risked everything that day. She left her baby boy to help a stranger. He couldn't stop thinking about that. He couldn't stop thinking about her. She reminded him what it meant to be seen. And in seeing her, he saw the kind of woman he would have missed entirely if he stayed in his tower. He didn't expect forgiveness. He didn't expect anything. But he needed her to know she had changed him. And whether or not she ever spoke to him again, he would be thankful for that, for her, for the rest of his life. Sincerely, Charles. Molly pressed the letter to her chest, her eyes filling. The paper blurred as tears slipped down her cheeks. She had not realized how badly she needed those words, how deeply she had doubted whether she meant anything to him. Eli fussed beside her. She picked him up, wiping her face with her sleeve, rocking him gently. "Mama," he murmured sleepily, cheek against hers. "I'm okay," she whispered. "Just a little confused, sweetheart." Eli looked toward the fridge where a photo still hung, a blurry picture Charles had taken of the two of them at the cafe laughing. Eli tapped the image with a tiny finger. "Dada," he said. Molly froze. "What did you say?" she whispered. "Dada," he repeated, smiling. She stared at the photo, at Charles's smile, at Eli reaching for him that day. It was not just the letter. It was everything. Charles staying in the ER all night. Quiet toy drops. Bills paid anonymously. The way he had looked at her when she said no, not hurt, just patient. He had never tried to own her, never made her feel small. And yet she had let others convince her she was not enough. Molly looked down at her son, now curled quietly against her. Safe. She was tired of hiding. That evening she went to the park. Wind stirred the leaves and children laughed in the distance. She walked to the spot where it had started, where Charles had collapsed, where her hands had shaken, where she had chosen to act. And she waited. 15 minutes later, she saw him. Charles walked slowly, hands in his coat pockets, not expecting anyone. He stopped when he saw her. They stood in silence as the breeze tugged at her hair. Eli rested against her in the carrier, already dozing. Charles spoke first. "You read it." "I did. It was honest and kind." She said, her voice steady. He nodded, keeping his distance. "But it wasn't the letter that brought me here," she added. "It was everything before that." She met his eyes. "I know how people see me, and I let that get in my head. But when I think about you, about how you treated me, how you cared for Eli, I realize I let fear push me away from something real." His expression softened. "I care," she said. "I am scared. But I care, and I want you in our life if you still want to be." "I do," he said, stepping forward. "More than anything." He reached out, placing a hand over Eli's back, then looked into Molly's eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "No," she said, tears returning. "Thank you for being there when I didn't even know I needed someone." They stood together. No grand declarations, no fairy tale illusions, just quiet honesty, second chances, and something steady growing between them. They never called it a relationship. There were no labels, no declarations, just patterns, small and unspoken, forming like stitches, mending fabric once torn. Charles began showing up more often sometimes on Sunday mornings with a bag of groceries and Eli's favorite fruit puree. He would knock gently, wearing that same uncertain smile, as if unsure he belonged, but hoping he did. Molly, still cautious, always let him in. Eli, now wobbling confidently on 2 feet, would squeal with joy, arms reaching out to Charles. What started as quiet curiosity had grown into recognition, a bond, a rhythm. They went to the grocery store on quiet Wednesday evenings when the aisles were empty. Molly pushed the cart. Charles carried Eli and held the shopping list. They debated over oatmeal brands, joked about diaper sizes, and bickered about which baby wipes were gentler. Strangers smiled at them like any other little family. And for the first time, Molly did not flinch at the assumption. Weekends meant the park, where ducks waddled past picnics, swings creaked in rhythm, and children shrieked freely. Charles brought extra sunscreen Band-Aids, fruit snacks. He learned how to pack a diaper bag, how to carry Eli while sipping coffee, how to scoop him up mid-stumble with a calm, "Got you, buddy." And Molly still worked hard cafe mornings, delivery shifts at night. But some nights she actually slept because someone else was there, rocking Eli at 3:00 a.m., whispering lullabies he barely remembered learning from his own mother. "I can't believe you know how to do that," Molly said one morning, watching Charles flip pancakes shaped like stars for Eli's breakfast. "I Googled it," he admitted. "Practiced a dozen times. I burned half." Molly laughed, really laughed, and that alone made him pause, smile, and tuck the memory away like something valuable. Then came the gala. Charles invited her. It was his first public event since the heart attack. Molly hesitated, but she said yes. She had no gown, so she borrowed a navy blue dress from a friend and tailored it herself with needle and thread at night after putting Eli to sleep. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. A little too snug at the waist, a hem stitched unevenly, a borrowed lace ribbon tying back her golden hair. She had never looked more radiant. Eli was the ring bearer. When his name was called, he walked with great ceremony across the small grass aisle, fists clenched tightly around the 2 simple bands tucked inside a velvet pouch. He nearly tripped on a root but caught himself, stood up proud, and beamed as the guests clapped. Molly and Charles both fought tears as he handed them the rings. During the vows, Charles looked into her eyes and said nothing overly poetic or rehearsed, just one quiet promise. "Whatever life asks of me, I will show up for you, for him, for us." When it was her turn, Molly's voice trembled, but she held his gaze. "I once saved a man's life on a sidewalk," she said. "But the truth is, he saved mine and my son's. Not with money, not with grand gestures, but with quiet kindness, with presence, with the courage to care." There wasn't a dry eye among the small group seated on folding chairs. After the ceremony, they didn't drive off in a limousine. There was no after-party in a luxury suite. Instead, the 3 of them returned to a modest, charming house near the park, a place with a cracked front step and squeaky screen door, but it had a porch and a tree for Eli to someday climb and windows that opened to morning light. They made hot cocoa that evening, rich with cream and cinnamon. Eli sipped his from a plastic cup with both hands while sitting on Charles's lap. Molly leaned back into the rocking chair beside them barefoot, her dress still trailing behind her, her cheeks pink from the breeze. The sky stretched wide above them, a blanket of stars slowly unfurling. "Do you think the stars can hear us?" Molly whispered. Charles glanced up, then back down at her, smiling gently. "I used to think I needed someone who made me feel important," he said. "Someone who would make me look powerful, sharp, impressive in front of the world." He paused. "But I was wrong. What I needed was someone who made me want to be a better man. Someone who made me worth being called a father." Molly looked at him, tears quietly gathering in her eyes. She reached out, rested her hand over his. Eli yawned against Charles's chest, then curled closer, eyes fluttering shut. For a while they sat in silence, wrapped in the peace of something fragile but whole. Not a perfect family, not a perfect ending, but they were together, and that was more than enough. "I'm not alone anymore," Molly whispered softly as she laid her head on Charles's shoulder, her voice nearly lost in the wind. He turned, kissed the top of her hair, and held her close. Beneath the stars, with the scent of autumn in the air, and their son asleep between them, they let the future be unknown. It would come as it always did, one breath, one heartbeat, one brave choice at a time. And whatever came next, they would face it not as strangers from different worlds, but as a family. One built not by blood, but by love. Sometimes a single moment, a breath, a choice, a heartbeat can shift the entire course of a life. Molly never asked for praise. Charles never expected a second chance. And Eli, he just wanted someone to tuck him in at night and love his mama the way she deserved. This was not a fairy tale. This was real, messy, beautiful, earned. If this story moved you, if you believe love can cross barriers of class, age, and past mistakes, then don't forget to hit that hype button to show your support. And most importantly, subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more true-to-the-heart tales that remind us love does not arrive perfectly packaged. It arrives when we are brave enough to give it space. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, breathe deeply, love honestly, and live fully.